Hello, friend. Welcome to our July monthly mindful check-in. This episode, this installment of our Almanac series is a little bittersweet for me. I started this series last August, and I was so excited to share them with you and take this scheduled mindful pause with you each month because it is a part of my practice to slow down and take a moment to reflect, take stock, or set my intentions for the coming month because life can fly by sometimes. So we need to schedule a stop to smell the roses and just take a look around. If this is your first check-in, they all kind of follow the same map, and we talk about mindful reminders that the month's symbolism shares, and a little bit of history and fun ways we can plan to sprinkle mindful moments throughout the month. So the reason it's bittersweet, this video is the 12th in the series, so we have done a complete year. I might bring a monthly check-in back around in some other way later on, but for now, this will be the finale of the series. I have created an almanac playlist on my channel, so if you missed some, you can find them neatly packaged there. But I feel like July is a great month to end on because it is rich with symbolism for our passion, our intuition, emotion, and creativity. So let's get into it. I'm Lauren, and if you're curious about mindfulness, healing, and practical habits that actually work, you're in the right place. Here, we focus on simple but powerful practices grounded in ancient wisdom and modern science to care for both our mind and body. So go ahead, hit the like and subscribe so you don't miss what's next. First, friend, let yourself fully arrive to the moment for these 10 minutes we have here together. Take a deep breath in through your nose. And a whooshing exhale out through the mouth. Let your shoulders relax. You'll get back to tackling life, but for now, just be here. Notice how you are arriving today. Maybe you're feeling energized and motivated, or maybe there's some fatigue and exhaustion. Maybe you're carrying some uncertainty, excitement, or perhaps there's a mixture of all of that. Whatever is present for you right now is welcome here. One of the reasons I love these monthly check-ins is because they give us a chance to intentionally mark the transition from one chapter to the next. Life moves fast, and sometimes days turn into weeks, turn into months, turn into years, and before you know it, when we finally stop and look around um, and stop for a full breath, we realize we've been running on autopilot without ever stopping to ask ourselves how we're actually doing. As we say goodbye to June, this is a great time to ask ourselves, what are we ready to carry with us into July, and what are we ready to leave behind? All right, July brings with it a fascinating combination of opposites. Traditionally, this month is associated with both the fire and water. At first glance, it may seem like these two would cancel each other out or be mutually destructive. Fire is active and passionate and transformative and energizing, where water is intuitive, adaptive, reflective, and healing. Fire represents creativity, confidence, and passion, and water is our emotions, intuition, adaptability, and our protection. They have this beautiful relationship, and we need both sides. I've learned over the years that neither action nor reflection is enough on its own. We need both. We need that fire that inspires us to create, grow, and move forward. And we need water that helps us to remain connected to ourselves and to the people around us. Without awareness, action can become impulsive. And if we don't take action, what we do become aware of gets stagnant. Emotionally intelligent action happens when both are working together. It shows up when we listen to what we're feeling while also taking responsibility for how we respond, or when we allow intuition to inform our decisions without handing it complete control of the steering wheel. We can see the relationship when we move forward thoughtfully rather than reactively. And I think if we look a little closer at that, we might find that some of the most important transformations in life happen when opposites learn to work together. Fire without water can become destructive. Water without fire can become stagnant. But together, they create movement, balance, and transformation. And I think this is a beautiful theme for us to explore this month because most of us have areas of our lives where we're being called to balance seemingly opposite forces. Maybe we're trying to balance action with patience, confidence with humility, logic with intuition, or structure with creativity. Maybe we're trying to figure out when to push forward and when we kind of just need to step back. July invites us to explore that middle ground, not just choosing one side or the other, but learning how we can get both to work together. I found that one of the places many of us experience this tension between fire and water is during difficult decisions or stressful situations. You know, those moments when you've thought about something so much that it feels like your brain is just running laps around the same track. It's replaying, rehearsing, planning, and worrying, just trying so hard to solve the problem over and over. At some point, that can become a signal. It's trying to tell us that we've gathered all the information our thinking mind currently has access to, and it may be time to bring another source of wisdom into the conversation. One practice I use is what I think of as a mind body conversation. When we notice ourselves stuck in loops, we intentionally shift our attention out of the story and into the body. With the situation in mind, take a slow breath in and do a quick body scan to notice where this dilemma or challenge is showing up physically. Is it tight shoulders, a clenched jaw, a heaviness in your chest, or tension in your stomach? Once you've identified where you're carrying it, imagine the breath moving to that area. As you exhale, intentionally allow the part of that body to soften. Then ask yourself, what's the next single right step? Not for the entire solution, not some 5-year plan, just one next step. And sometimes an answer arrives immediately. Sometimes it can take a little time. But I've found that when we stop demanding all the answers all at once, we are often able to hear the guidance that was already there. Another powerful mindful practice we can turn to is to take it to the journal. When our thoughts stay trapped in our heads, they can easily get tangled together with our fears, assumptions, and worst case scenarios. Writing helps us to slow down and organize what we're actually dealing with. So try writing down the challenge as objectively as possible. Then ask yourself, what resources do I have? What support is available to me? What options are realistically on the table? And what facts do I know to be true? One of the reasons journaling can be so helpful is that it engages our prefrontal cortex. And that's the part of the brain sitting right behind the forehead that's involved in planning, reasoning, decision making. In other words, it can help us step out of the stories and the loops our minds tend to create and reconnect us with what is actually happening. Both of these practices invite fire and water to work together. The fire of action, the water of awareness, the fire of moving forward, and the water of listening deeply. As we move through July, you may notice opportunities to practice the balance of these two elements. Early in the month, there is this theme of emotional clearing, self care, reflection, and strengthening our foundations. And the start of this month is known to be a time of expected insights. So if you caught some of our late June videos, we paused to ask ourselves some reflective questions. Maybe if your answer didn't clearly come immediately and it's just kind of been in there marinating, maybe that answer is closer now. It will come out of nowhere in those small moments where you're just moving along throughout your day, folding laundry, taking a shower, or walking the dog. Make sure you're listening. Those moments can feel random, but often they're a result of our brains continuing to process information behind the scenes. As we get to the middle of the month, there is a noticeable shift towards creativity, self expression, confidence, and visibility. It's like the month starts with clearing space, and then it invites us to step more fully into what wants to emerge. All right, let's step back for a moment and take a look at some of the other symbolism June brings. The birthstone of the month is the ruby. It's been called the king of gems and has long been associated with courage, vitality, protection, love, motivation, passion, and just for life itself. This is your fire energy of July. Historically, people connected rubies with blood and the life force. They were seen as symbols of strength, determination, and the courage to pursue what mattered most. If you have a ruby, maybe this month spend some time meditating with it while pondering what brings you alive. Where are your passions that light you up from the inside? July is a great time to reconnect with some of those passions and interests that make us feel more fully engaged with ourselves and with our lives. And not just so that they can become the next side hustle, but because joy, curiosity, and meaning matter too. Okay, this month has two flowers associated. One that has a deep, rich history is the water lily. Water lilies grow from muddy water, but they bring these big, beautiful blooms floating peacefully on the surface. Across many cultures, they have symbolized rebirth, enlightenment, purity, renewal, tranquility. The ancient Egyptians associated them with creation and the daily rebirth of the sun. What I love most about the symbolism of the water lily is the reminder that growth doesn't require perfect conditions. Sometimes we tell ourselves that, I'll start healing when life settles down. We'll begin creating something when we have more time, or we'll focus on our goals when things become easier. But life rarely hands us perfect conditions. The water lily doesn't wait for the water to become crystal clear before it begins to grow. It just does it anyway, and maybe that's worth reflecting on this month. What part of us is ready to emerge even if conditions aren't perfect? Or what are we postponing because we're waiting for the ideal moment? The other flower of this month is the larkspur. Now, this one isn't one I'm super familiar with already, so I was really interested to learn about it. It is said to be a favorite of butterflies, bees, and hummingbirds. It's also been historically associated with the lightness of spirit, and I think that's absolutely a beautiful reminder because sometimes life can just feel like a series of handling one thing after the next, checking obligations off the list, running the mental to do list, but the larkspur is here to remind us that joy matters, play matters, curiosity matters. Sometimes what we need most isn't another task or a strategy, but just simple permission to enjoy being alive. The tree of the month is the oak, and the oak is one of my absolute favorite trees with their huge canopies and crooked, sprawling branches. Oaks have long been symbolized for strength, wisdom, longevity, stability, and protection. They have this quiet strength that doesn't come from being the toughest or the most rigid, but a flexibility that helps them survive the storms. And that has just got to be one of the best lessons we can learn from nature. They move with changing conditions while remaining rooted. As we move through life, we are going to have to navigate through uncertainties. And the ability to remain grounded while also remaining flexible can be one of the most valuable skills we can develop. Okay, I like to sprinkle little mindful anchors throughout my month. So from daysoftheyear.com, I found some great opportunities to mark the calendar for some intentional mindful moments. July 7th is Global Forgiveness Day. This may be a hot take, but I actually love this idea. Now, I know forgiveness can be a complicated topic. For a long time, I wouldn't even say I struggled with forgiveness because I was straight up adamantly against it, and I was going to die on that hill. I would tell myself, my counselors, a therapist, I absolutely was not going to give them my forgiveness. I saw it as they had already taken so much. I had given so much. And why would I forgive someone that refuses accountability? And it wasn't until my late 20s that someone said to me, they chose to forgive for their own sake. It wasn't for the other person, it was for them because holding on to it was making them sick. And that really hit home for me because I was sick and it was getting worse. And it's not the one of those things that doctors can just run some tests and be like, yep, this is what it is, this is how or where it started from, and this is what we can do. But research continues to show that chronic anger, resentment, and prolonged stress can have significant impacts on both our physical and mental health. Over the years, I learned what I didn't know then about the vagus nerve and our gut brain axis. Not to get too sidetracked, but long story short, refusing to see forgiveness as an option was literally making me sick, and it was going to kill me if I didn't do something about it. I had to learn that forgiveness doesn't mean letting them off the hook and pretending that it didn't happen or that it was okay by any means. And it doesn't mean I approve of the harmful, abusive behavior, but that instead it would be a conscious choice of releasing the ongoing attachments to the pain. And my favorite part I learned is that if I forgive someone else, I wouldn't have to abandon the boundaries I had clawed my way to get to. I can forgive and still wish you to stay the over there. Forgiveness is deciding that we no longer want to carry the burden. So on this day, you don't have to confront anyone or offer forgiveness, but take a moment to consider if there is anyone who hurt you that you're holding on to. Make a list, write out the hurts, then burn the paper in a safe space, of course. Look at it like I did. Are they actually feeling any effects from you holding on to this thing? Because I would wager you are. As the saying goes, holding a grudge is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. Okay, that was kind of a heavy one, heavy to work through for sure, but it will lighten your soul. But let's lighten things a little more. On the 18th, we have Toss Away the Could Haves and Should Haves Day. If you spent any time on this channel, you probably already know how I feel about the shoulds. The mind loves to revisit old situations and create alternate versions of history. Like, I should have said this, or I shouldn't have done that, or I could have made a different choice. And while reflection can certainly help us learn, repeatedly arguing with the past rarely changes anything. One practice you might try is writing them out or making a note in your phone to get them out of your head and give them somewhere else to live. Then follow each one up with a compassionate response, not from your inner critic, but from your wiser self, the part of you that understands that to move forward, we need awareness, not self punishment. Okay, lastly, on the 24th, we have International Self Care Day. I think it's important to remember that self care looks different for different people. For some, it may mean taking a long bath and doing the full skincare routine. For others, maybe it's going for a walk, reading a book, going to your favorite fishing spot, spending time with loved ones, getting enough sleep, or even setting a boundary. The question isn't whether we are doing self care right. The question is whether we're actually supporting ourselves, whether we're paying attention to what we need, or if we're extending the same care towards ourselves that we offer so readily to others. All right, before we wrap up, I want to touch briefly on creativity because it is such an important theme for this month, and we'll actually be exploring it more deeply later with a guided meditation. But for now, for a long time, scientists believed creativity was primarily located in one side of the brain. Today, we know the process is much more complex. Creativity involves multiple brain regions and networks all working together. It brings together our memory systems, our emotional systems, our attention networks, and our imagination, and even our analytical thinking. One network that we've talked about before is the default mode network, also called our brain's storytelling machine. It's active during rest, reflection, daydreaming, and imagination. But creativity doesn't stop there. Another network called the executive control network, one we haven't talked about before, it helps us evaluate, organize, and apply those ideas that we come up with. In other words, creativity isn't just generating ideas, it's also knowing what to do with them. That's one reason activities like meditation, mindful movement, walking, exercising, journaling, and even taking a nap can support your creativity. Sometimes the most productive thing we can do is to step away for a little while and give our minds room to wander and ideas space to connect and come together. As we move into July, here are a few questions you might want to reflect on. Where am I being invited to trust myself more? What am I ready to release? What lights a fire in me? And where do I need more compassion? One more, how can I balance action with reflection this month? And no worries, I will leave those in the description below for you to come back to. Friend, July isn't asking us to choose between fire and water. It's inviting us to learn from both, to honor our passions without losing touch with our wisdom, to embrace change while we are still grounded, and to create space for both movement and reflection. Friend, thank you so much for sharing a piece of your day with me. Stay present, stay kind to yourself, and I will see you soon.